Streaming sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Angle here with TGI Sports Talks. Are you serious? With my co-host soon to be joining us, I hope, the Mad New Yorker, Carlos Chavez. He's not in the studio yet, but we'll go through our open and we'll see if Carlos pops in. Hopefully he does, because one of these topics is one that he and I got into a little bit on last week's Sunday Stream of Consciousness about NFL training camps and whether they have any importance at all, which is a shocking question to me. But we'll get into that. I want to welcome everybody who's watching this morning, who will watch this morning live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. This show will replay, will air live for the first time on Roku at 10 a.m. this morning, and also replay periodically throughout the week. Please check out that. Check out my vlog. I don't know what my vlog will be today. I don't really want to do Deshaun Watson, so I haven't come up with my vlog topic yet. Sometimes it takes me until doing this show or doing the Friday show with Mac and Jack or doing my show with Dan Harris at 2 o'clock to totally decide what I want to do. So we'll see how that goes. Please check out this week's college football huddle, which we'll replay on Roku at 11:30 today. I also will repost it to the TGI Sports Talk page as I do, until it kind of runs out of relevance. I reshare it to Twitter as well. We had Larry Sorensen on, and we talked about the ACC a bit, and Sam Hartman specifically, Wake Forest outlook this year with Sam Hartman out, but they've got a lot of people back, so they're still pretty excited about their potential season this year. And we talked about some other topics in college football. We went around the league quite a bit. The audience really drives that show as well, and we talked a lot about that. What else? Oh, Sunday Stream of Consciousness. So last week we did go impromptu. We had we didn't do our live show at 9 a.m. We did because I was traveling, getting back into town. So we did an impromptu show, which went very well. We did it outside without any special effects, just me and my laptop, and went pretty well. You guys did a great job of participating, as you always do, and I thank you for that. A little bit of news, and we'll talk about it a bunch of on the coming weeks. We're going to move that show on Sunday mornings, starting on, I want to say September 4th. We're going to move that show to 8:30 to 10:30 live on all the. Good morning, Alan. Good to have you here. We'll be live 8:30 to 10:30 starting September 4th on the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. I just need to free up a little time on the back end of the morning. So we're gonna switch that up a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't impact any of you who participate live. Obviously you'll be able to watch that show periodically on Roku and TGI Sports Talk at any point in time on demand as well. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to get into some conversation that spawned from that last week's Sunday Stream of Consciousness that we did kind of in an impromptu fashion, and about whether the importance of NFL training camps. But now I see Carlos has joined us. I'll have him in here in a second. And we'll also talk a little bit, or a lot, about the Deshaun Watson final ruling, it would appear, that has come down yesterday. So we'll bring in Carlos now and welcome him in. Good evening. I'm sorry. Good morning, Carlos. How are you?
Good morning. How you guys doing today? Happy Friday. It could be evening in some places in the world on the Roku channel.
In fact, we have a lot, shockingly enough, we have a lot of followers in like Pakistan and in England and countries that are certainly in far different time zones. So heck, some of them could be watching us in the middle of the night tomorrow for all I know. So who knows?
Keith, you're number one in Nairobi. Just remember that.
I do think Nairobi is one of my strong holds as well. So I appreciate that, Carlos. And I think you joining this part of this show has increased my viewership in Nairobi. So thank you very
That's
much.
somewhere in Nicaragua. Somebody's watching me and saying I have the same name as them.
We got the same name as the former Venezuelan dictator as well.
Actually, my brother's name is Hugo Chavez.
Is it really?
It is.
Does it impact his life at all?
Not really. No.
Well, that's good because they know that Hugo's gone. And
Yeah.
Probably for a good thing.
Not my brother, but the president, the ex-president.
Did have not yes, the president's gone, not your brother. He did have some amazing records in elections. So I think he got like 99.5% of the vote in every election he ever ran in. So tremendous vote record in elections. So.
They didn't have any problem with any hanging chads, so they did okay.
No, they're necessary in places like Venezuela. We'll count them for you. You don't even have to vote. We'll take care of it. You don't have to show up. Anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand. I know we obviously NFL training camps are in full bore. Preseason games are in full bore, which, again, I'm not a huge fan of the games, but I know they need to be played. You and I think, had a bit of a disagreement last Sunday, and I want to talk about the fact, are these NFL training camps necessary or necessary evil? I think they're necessary evil, and this stemmed from, just so I can set up some context, this conversation stemmed from the fact that I have a huge problem with Tom Brady, and still do. We don't even know when he's coming back. News story today about Todd Bowles won't even commit to when he's coming back.
Poor Todd Bowles.
Poor Todd Bowles, right?
I mean, Todd Bowles is a great coach, everybody. He's a great communicator when he has a plan, when he has to talk football. But don't put him in front of a mic because you're not going to like the answer he gives you.
Well, it's a lot of NFL coaches like that. So we had a game last night. That was actually probably a race for who will be the worst team in the NFL this year, possibly those two teams. So anyway, let's talk about this topic. NFL training camp. Is it important? I say it is, because I say guys like Tom Brady, the leader of your team, missing time. And this isn't about whether he's going to be focused. The vlog I did last week, kind of ripping Tommy pretty good, which I don't do. I'm one of Tom Brady's biggest fans and biggest backers, but I have a big problem with this, and fans are saying he'll be focused. He understands what he's got to do to be ready. I know he does. That's not the point. Right. The point is the rest of the team that's there, first of all, working their butt off, and their star quarterback's at home with his wife and family. And if there's something else going on that we don't know about, then I apologize. I've said this, but by all reports, there's nothing else going on that is more serious that he needs to be away from camp from, other than he had an agreement that he could spend time with his wife and kids during training camp. So it's not about him being ready. It's about being ready with the rest of the team and getting on the same page. You got a brand new head coach. You're putting him in a bad position. It'll divide a team, things like this, and your leader can't be doing things like this. So that was the premise of what started this conversation. So I'll let you talk about, I tell you, training camps are important for many, many, many reasons. You don't think they're as important as I do. No,
I mean, there are no correlations, first of all, between what happens in a training camp preseason to how a football season ends for any team in the NFL. None whatsoever. Sure, there are things that happen during the preseason and training camps that affect teams' rosters, injuries, cuts, things that people moving on, coaches moving on, coaches, even during training camp, sometimes that happens, but to be honest with you, it's just a way for a team to make sure that they have their rosters ready, make sure that they have their secondary teams ready, as far as what happens if teams get injured, a team gets injuries. So, as a coach, you could come in and try to set a precedent and try to, get everybody motivated and on the same page. Yeah, those are things that happen on every team in any sport. But if you take NFL preseason and compare it to other preseasons, this is one of the worst in sports because
in what regard? Because
in the fact where what you do in preseason is going to help you and affect what the season outcome is. There's no correlation.
I want to be clear what you're saying. You're saying that the NFL training camp has less to do with season preparation than any other sport.
That's correct. The reason why they're structured the way they are is to make sure that the athletes are game ready, and that the rosters are set up, and that's why the NFLPA fought and the players fight the NFL for the reduction of preseason. To be honest with you, and if you just take two of the teams in the NFC in two different divisions, the Dallas Cowboys, for instance, they didn't win any preseason games last season at all.
All right, we got to back up for 1 second, though, Carlos. There's a big difference in my mind between the preseason games, which I don't care if we play any, because you can play these the two-team practice, the shared practice sessions. You can play scrimmages. You can do whatever you want to do. Maybe you play one exhibition game just to get game speed. But I'm talking about training camp in general is important. It's the most important training camp in all of sports because you got coaches putting in playbooks. You got new players coming in. They got to learn those playbooks. You got to build team chemistry and team camaraderie. And you have to get on the same page, especially when you're a quarterback with your offensive line and your receivers. And Alan actually makes a comment about, the Tampa Bay line and how they've got some new people there. And I think he's talking about the injuries themselves, but the comment's still relevant to the Tom Brady situation. The fact that he's not there building that rapport and getting they have to learn a cadence. Just learning a quarterback's cadence is important for an offensive line. You can't just take these guys and get to, September 7th, whatever it is, opening day, and say, okay, throw the ball in the field and go play.
But it's essentially, Keith, they do that every season. And the NFL fans for the first 7 games are watching just terrible football. I mean, because these guys are getting in more an emotion, and they understand who they're playing with on the roster. Like that's what the first 4 or 5 games I feel like we're watching is going on, because they don't do the same thing, because they don't have the same rosters until the last day of the preseason anyways. So,
well, Carlos, I can make the argument that what you just said actually defeats your argument, because the things that they've the fact that they don't hit in camp the way they used to, part of this is negotiated by the players into to their agreement with the owners, right? And the fact that they don't hit in camp and the camps aren't as long. Forget about the games. I'm not as interested in the games. It's not so much. I don't want to focus so much on that because I don't necessarily disagree about the games. But training camp itself, the fact that they've lessened the intensity of training camps is what's causing this bad play for the first month of the season that you're talking about.
That's neither here nor there. That's why if you
see, that's the heart of the argument.
Well, the problem in what I'm stating and what I've been saying is that there's no correlation that specifically leads to any of this and any of these stats that some of these players and these teams are having in the first 4 or 5 days of the season. It doesn't. So that means, because again, the first few practices are these teams trying to figure out what players are veteran that are worth keeping on the team and starting with. What rookies are going to be on the team or are going to get the more starts to the preseason so that they can keep. And so a lot of this thing, as far as you're saying that the line and the wide receivers and the quarterbacks and all are trying to get on the same page, that happens, sure, but not on the level that you're saying it happens, because there are more actions by quarterbacks in the off season and them inviting their players to try to get on the same page, like Peyton Manning used to do.
Tom Brady did it for years.
Tom Brady. So their timing and those things are done even before the preseason starts. But if you're talking about the O-line getting set and being on the same page, that doesn't happen till like game 4 or game 5 of the regular season, and that happens, and that's predominantly happening now because you don't know what your actual line is going to look like until after the 3rd preseason game.
Which is why you need to find out what that line will be. I mean, you need the player evaluation. You need to get in shape. You need to get hit.
Yeah, all those things you should be doing like before the preseason starts anyway, before training camp. You should be able to be ready to be in training camp and the preseason. But that's a different story now, the way that it's set up. The structural setup
the players
for the NFL. If you can even look it up, it's set up by the NFLPA and the NFL, and you can even look up on Bleacher Report on how the preseason is set up. And the situation doesn't lead to these teams being better. it gives them structure, but it doesn't lead to a team being on the same page on the field and actually seeing great football. You don't see great football until usually the playoffs, because now those teams are now they now have a spirited core. They now have teamwork going their way. They're now in sync with each other. So everything that you want out of preseason is not what you get until after game 4 or 5 anyways.
I don't disagree that no matter what the training camp situation is, teams will grow. And Alan just said that in his comment too. Teams are going to grow. They're going to have growing pains, and they're going to get better as the season goes along. Some of them are going to get worse.
Right. Yeah.
But the good teams are going to get better. But again, I go back to your comment about, again, the last 10 years, I feel like we see more bad football the first month of the season than we've ever seen, because of the less intense training camps that the players have negotiated, and the things that you talked about that don't happen leading up to training camp have been negotiated out too, because the players don't want to have the physical contact. And I say one of the reasons players get hurt more during the regular season is because they don't hit when they're not playing football games. And that's part of the problem. And that's why training camp's important too, to get your body in shape to get hit.
No. Okay. So again, Keith, it's probably about 20 to 25 years, not 10. And I say that in the sense where the coaching styles have changed. The NFLPA has a lot to do with what's going on as far as what the players have to do. And
want more time with players. Right. Don't get misled. They want more time with players, not less. They want more time.
Well, if that's the case, then we would have more preseason games.
The coaches don't call the shots. The owners and the players do.
Right. So the thing is, and what you're saying, there might be some correlation to what you're saying about injuries, but the more and more science that comes out about these players getting injured, it's more about the fact that a lot of these players take more and more supplements that are, they have less. The recuperation time between injuries is a lot less than it used to be. Some players would have, a bad ankle and be out 2 months in the past. They don't come back in 2 months. They come back in, 3 weeks. So, those little things, those add up as well. So I
don't disagree with that.
And if you get hit during regular practice or you get hit during the game, you're going to get, it's not really going to help you. It's just more of a fact it's more of a thing where it's recuperation time between injuries matter more than being hit.
It's and more about being able to take a hit. Because as you play at game speed, you know how to avoid injuries. Quarterbacks know how to, go down when they're getting hit so they don't get hurt. Things like that.
Well, those things are individual, and there's a lot of quarterbacks that need to practice those things, and they don't even practice them in the off season when they have the opportunity to. Like they're more trying to gain weight and make sure that they have the muscle mass. They're trying to be more flexible. They're working on their timing and throwing the ball, but they're not working on trying to escape and trying to fall the right way.
No, they do.
That's an issue,
because they're not getting hit. Number one, there's hardly any hitting in training camp anyway, which we just talked about. Now,
well, it doesn't even. I mean, okay, the hitting part is arguable, is argumentative, but there's no correlation, man. There's no real correlation and science behind that. If you get hit during the preseason, you're going to be a lot better during the regular season.
I'll give you that, but that's just one point that we're making. The point that I'm making is, the bigger point that I'm making is, without training camp for 4-5 weeks, whatever it's going to be, you do not have a team prepared to go into week 1 in a regular season and play competent football, because you haven't learned the plays, especially when you've got new coaches, new coaching staffs, new players, because free agency guys are moving around right and left. They've got to learn new systems. The Patriots this year are a great example. They're going through great growing pains in with their offense in training camp. And if you had no training camp and you just threw them out there game 1, I can't imagine how ugly it would be for 2 months.
Your Patriots are going to look ugly no matter what they do, whether they did training camp or not, because their head coach didn't make a decision at the end of the season to bring back an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. That's a problem that has nothing to do with training camp. Second of all,
as an example, with no training camp, the situation would be worse.
So now they've had a training camp. They're going to have 3 games. You think the Patriots are going to come out swinging?
I think they'd be better than if you just threw the football out there and said, go at it in September.
We'll see. That's up to the team to show if they learned anything during training camp as well. So, but
again, that's one example. You cannot tell me that if you just threw the football out there at game one for all these teams and they just got together a week before that and said, "Hey, how you doing?" They got fitted for their equipment and they went out and played. The football would be absolutely atrocious.
It's still atrocious, Keith. That's what I'm saying to you. The NFL football games are still terrible for the first 4 or 5 games anyways. This is why the NFL and the NFLPA were like, fine, if you guys think that and we want the fans to pay for games, then we'll just get rid of the preseason, the amount of preseason games, because it doesn't matter what you have out there at the beginning of the season, because everybody's saying you got to go through growing pains, you got to find a team, everybody, the rosters are finalized. Injuries are injuries. They're going to happen throughout the season, but
Rick uses one of my favorite quotes here, but Mike Tyson said everybody's got a plan to get hit in
the mouth, right?
But I don't know about the soccer reference. I would say even soccer teams have to have some kind of training camp to get ready.
Okay. So soccer players, they go during their off season, they'll go and play international games. But a lot of these guys, good morning, Bob. A lot of these guys, even if they're playing, some of these exhibition games, it doesn't mean that you're getting the best out of them. You're not, and then it doesn't, most of the time, it doesn't help them for the regular season anyway. It's just a way for them to keep in shape.
I can't agree with that. And I got no way to prove it except to skip training camp altogether next year and throw a football.
I'm not saying that anyway. What I'm saying, and my argument for this situation is that, the training camps are not set up for these guys to have high performance games for the first 5 games, because the first 4 to 5 games are atrocious, no matter what year it's been in the last 20 years. They've just been terrible.
Do you understand why these training camps are set up the way
of course.
What the players want.
What the players want.
Because they don't want to get hit in training camp. They don't want this because they don't want to risk their money. They don't want to risk this. They'd rather protect their paycheck than get ready to do their job at the utmost efficiency. Am I wrong?
There's some truth to what you're saying, but other people say other things as well. There's more than what you're saying for the argument of not having preseason games.
I made it pretty simple. Yes, I agree. I may simplified it a lot, but I'm telling you, training camps are important, and more intense training camps like they had in the past would be beneficial to these teams to prepare for the season, regardless of whatever reason that they've gotten.
So the thing that bothers me, and even to try to find an argument for either side, is that no matter whether there were more training camps and preseason games, what you do before the season starts to where you are in the first game, or where you stand in the 6th game, or where you stand in, whether you're in the playoffs or not, most of that doesn't, they don't lead into each other at all. Right. And what, like, for instance, even last year, Dallas didn't win any preseason games at all. Right. And they went into the season. And they just started winning games. They were like 5-0 before any other team.
But they were going through training camp and preparing for the season in whatever. I don't think wins and losses in a preseason mean a thing. I don't disagree with you there.
Right. So
that doesn't mean you don't need the preparation. They're 2 different topics.
Okay, so now let's say they're in game 7. Half the roster from the preseason and even from the beginning of the season isn't even the same anyways.
Well, that might be a little high, but I agree there's a lot of turnover during the course.
Right. In hindsight, and the NFL looked at this, the NFLPA looks at this, and they're like, these things matter for the teams to get situated, for the teams to form a plan, but it doesn't reflect during the season. And that's where you and I are not coming into agreement. Right now, you need to be together as much as possible, and you need to play together as much as possible.
Yes,
but I'm saying to you, right? What I'm saying to you is that when I watch football from game 1 to game 5, it's terrible football.
And again, I told you if we had more intense training camps, that would be less of a situation.
But so what the NFLPA and the NFL has done really has created, instead of a 3-game preseason and an actual 11-game preseason, into teams are situated into a playoff situation.
I don't care if they play 2 preseason games. I don't care if they play 1. All I care about is a training camp aspect where my team is thrown together and they build. There's team building. When I say team building, I'm talking about building a chemistry within the team. And that's where I think Tom Brady is totally off base, being away from camp for half of it. He's not part of that team building. And don't you think, for a second, that there aren't guys in that Tampa Bay roster going, what is going on here? This guy goes home to be with his family for half the training camp, or I'm here working my butt off? Come on.
So I'm going to give you an example. The week 1 for the NFL preseason, week 1, right? For training camps. When your first pregame, before the first pregame, week 1 is an extension of practice. Okay? Right? Disagree. Now, because this is written down. This is what has been reported. You can read this on any news, any media outlet, right? Week 2, second team competition takes center stage in week 2. Okay, now your focus is on just let these veteran players. Now the first teams are on the side doing their reps, doing their practice, but more importantly, they're not hitting each other. What you're getting at? They're not hitting each other. There's no real live gameplay going on with the first team. None of that. They're just calisthenics, warming up, and catching pitch, hitting blocking drills. Okay, that's week 2. Week 2 is second team competition takes place on the center stage. Now we go to week 3. Right? Week 3 is game plans, regular season prep for the starters. On week 3, in essence, that they haven't played the starters, for instance.
What week are we in now of training camp? 3, week 3.
Week 3, right.
Where's Tom Brady in that? What you're just saying is the most important part of training camp so far.
Right. So they said this is the game planning part of the NFL, right? However, think about the number, week 3. Think about how many preseason games there are that they actually have to play, not just the scrimmages, right? But they don't even have their second team ready.
And again, don't forget though that these agendas are set up because of the way the coaches are handcuffed by what the players have negotiated into the players' contract with the owners, so that they don't have to have it as an intense training camp, and they are less prepared for the season. You keep backing my argument up. So go on.
Honest, if most of the things ain't happening, then they're really not necessary. These quarterbacks.
If you're telling me the bad football's inevitable at the beginning of the season, then I can't argue with it. Training camp's not important. But if you're telling me the first 4 games of the season don't matter, then why are we playing them? The whole argument doesn't make any sense to me. There should be more intense. There should be longer, more intense training camps to get teams ready to play regular season football. Do away with preseason games. I don't care about them. I really don't. But you cannot do away with the preparation part of training camp.
Look, this is week 4. Week 4, the rookie showcase, and then you get your final roster spots.
Yeah.
What shouldn't that be week 1?
Well, you can't. You haven't had a chance to evaluate guys.
Look, if you're coming out, you've already evaluated these kids in college.
You haven't seen them up against other
NFL players. You've seen them playing. This is the problem. This is why this is not needed.
Players against college players. I had this. We had this come up last week.
Football is football. A player has to step up to the situation, no matter what it is. Whether they're playing to the competition or not to the competition, that's an independent characteristic problem that players have. It's not a team issue. It could become a team issue if more than one or three players actually do that. But these players should be ready to come in and play because that's what you're paying them for.
I don't disagree. You should be ready to come to camp, ready to get ready for the season. I agree with that. Should you be ready to play? No, because you need coaches to get you ready to play in a real game.
Why the NFL needs a second division.
Why? That's got nothing to do with what we're talking about. I mean,
you don't have to worry about these cats coming in at all. You can just have your regular games, and you'll see a decent first or 2 or 3 games.
Oh gosh, you don't. You got to stop equating soccer with professional sports.
It has nothing to do with soccer. It's not about professional. It's about development. It's all about development. It has nothing to do with sport of any kind. It's just development.
But you talk about that all the time.
If you watch tennis, you have see 16-year-olds playing against 22, 23-year-olds, even 30-year-olds. The competition level gets high, and these guys get better. That's it. How many are great? Not that many. But Serena was one who was young and beat out competition twice her age.
Before I read Alan's comment here, again, I feel like you just made part of my argument. The more you compete, the better you get. So you need training camp.
Training camp is not competition. Training camp is training. That's where your argument is wrong. No. Because training camp is not competition. It's not. It's just setting a game plan.
There is competition, and it should be more intense competition than what it even is. I don't even know how these guys get in fights when they don't hit each other half the time.
Because they're not hitting each other. That's why. They want to hit each other, so they get in fights.
God, what's Alan got here? I feel like they should do a month of training camp to get rosters together, use the first preseason game to finalize rosters, and the second game to get ready. I'm okay with that. I'm just saying you can't do away with it. You can't do away with. You can do away with the games. I don't care.
But the NFL has, Keith.
Is really good.
The NFLPA and the NFL have gone away with it. They've gone to this schedule, this structure that you say, okay, these teams need to get on the same page. They're not going to do that in this 4-week schedule. That's not going to happen.
Well, it's better than no weeks.
I'm essentially telling you that they have really maybe 1 week that they're doing everything and anything together.
I disagree with a lot of that, because no matter, even if they're doing nothing in camp, you're still building a team chemistry and team building up with each other.
Yeah, but
biggest problems with Tom Brady being out of camp.
Listen, when you're conditioning and you're and everybody's on training and trying to get on the same page as far as a team is concerned, most of the team building stuff, it happens with a loss or an injury, right? Like that's when teams come together. There's a peak in the beginning of the season where your team comes together the most, and it could be like an injury, it could be another teammate leaving, it'd be something. There's a spark somewhere where your team galvanizes and get some galvanizing and together to do something as well together, right? And just because you're a coach and you try to force it, that's not. It doesn't essentially is going to happen, right? And you always talk about leadership, but man, let me tell you, man, a lot of people are not leaders, and there's going to be people there that are trying to be leaders that nobody's going to follow, or no people are just listening to, but they're not going to jump on that boat.
I do talk about leaders a lot, and that's my biggest problem with Tom Brady, the leader of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, not being in training camp, working with the rest of his team.
But those guys are their mentality is they're going to have to be in preseason, whether the quarterback's there or not, and they have to worry about their job because they're not Tom Brady, and they're not going to have their job if they left for 3 weeks. So that doesn't what your mentality is. That's not going to affect you, man. If you're talking about grown men getting paid to be where they're at, they're not there because they want to play a game. Essentially, they're there because they know how to play the game and they're getting paid for it now. Now, there could be that they still want to keep playing the game. Yeah, of course, you want that in a player, but that doesn't essentially happen. These are grown men now. These are people that got to put food on the plates and they got to pay their bills too. I mean, a ton of people forget that they're not just athletes making big, huge paychecks, but they all have, personal situations that they have to deal with, man.
Listen, but I would also argue that outside of training camp where you're there for a month, and most of those training camps are near home anyway, I would argue that NFL players are with their families more than probably any other sport that I can think of, because they're home, Monday through Friday every week. They go home at night.
They play less than a 21 week schedule, yes. Right? If you think about it, okay.
About during the season, baseball players don't see their families for half of the Major League Baseball season. NFL players see them every week,
right?
During the week,
most of the time. Well, it depends on if the player is from that area or not. Yes, or live in that area.
So they have a better work life balance than most other sports, I'd say.
Right. There's some truth to that.
But Tom Brady needs more.
If we take, for instance, the situation that happened to Mekhi Becton, right? He got injured during the season. He had time off season to better himself, to recuperate. Now he had a personal situation that's been out in the media. It's nothing that I'm making up, but that he was with his baby's mom. That she had a situation that he was with his family.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Nobody gets onto him about that.
I'm not
when you go back to report to the team for the conditioning, practicing, pre-practice, preseason, gatherings that they have to report into your team. He was not in shape at all. He was not in shape, and he was not fully recovered from his injury. Now, the fact that the Jets didn't take the time to release this information the correct way is one of the reasons I think that they're not going to be successful for a while.
Yeah, but again, I think we're
listen. So he goes back, right? He's in these preseason practices throwing up, right? Because and there's pictures of him throwing up. So it's not that I'm making this up. And every player around him is like, this guy's not ready to be practicing, and he shouldn't be on the field. And less than 2 days later, of the people mentioning this, of coaches seeing this and mentioning this, he re-injures his knee. Not the same injury, but he has a re-injury to the same knee that he was injured before. Mm-hmm. Okay, now, had he been training before preseason and actually been taking care of himself in a better way, I don't know what his situation was before, right? Maybe he was conditioning correctly, and maybe he just couldn't balance his weight off. Whatever it is, right? Had he taken that personally, and that he wouldn't have had this situation happen to him in spring training.
But again,
in the preseason.
This is why there's an importance to training camp. Now, did the Jets coaches handle this correctly? Probably not. That's not the question, though. That doesn't mean we don't need training camps. This is a great example. He'd have gone out there week 1 and maybe had a heart attack on the field instead of tearing up his head.
Right. But so you're saying that these guys need more training camp, more preseason. It's not essentially correct. They have to be conditioned before they even come into training camp.
I agree with that. And
right now,
here's a great point Alan makes too, by the way. Kind of on this topic. Notice that guys who are passionate about the game tend to have longer careers.
That's not essentially true. That's more of a. And
they stay in shape year round. Tom Brady's 45 years old and still able to compete at a high level because he trains year round, right?
Okay,
that's to your point. That's to your point.
Passion is something that you can't really. It's not for somebody to try to even.
No, you have it or you don't have it.
Yeah, that's an individual thing, and there's a lot of guys that have been in football for more than 10 years because they know that there's nothing else out there for them. So, you can't. That's to say that they're passionate or not is neither here nor there. But what I'm saying,
it's important because his point goes to your point. Passionate people about what they do are better prepared for what they do, and maybe Beckton and some other players aren't as passionate. Now, there's personal situations that come up. I understand that. But,
I'm not, okay, we can't say that Beckton is not passionate. We can say that Beckton was not ready to be coming into training. When you suffer an injury to your body and that's your moneymaker, a lot of stuff happens to you physically and mentally for you to try to get back into the same.
I don't say it's all passion. I'm sure that, Andrew Luck was very passionate about football, and he had to retire early because of injuries, and he lost his passion for football to be able to stay in shape because of the way he got beat down.
Even if you can even argue that he knew that his team wasn't up to par to protect him. Why even try another year if you know that you're going to get hit the way he got hit?
I would agree with that.
There was a couple years where he was either the first or the second most hit quarterback in the NFL.
Oh, he got the crap beat out of him for sure his entire career, and he had a great career while he was here, and it's a shame that it got cut short. And you're right, his passion was cut down or eliminated because of the beating that he took, and he didn't want to do it anymore. I understand. It's all we're together.
We are trying. I feel like the media and fans are trying to encompass everything and put everything in a package where in today's world of sports and athletes is totally different. You can't pigeonhole things, right? Because we're living in different times. Now, when we get back to the structure that NFLPA and NFL agreed to, right? I say the reason I say I don't feel like it's necessary is because you don't have a first team practicing all together at all, except for maybe the last week.
Well, partly because in one instance, your starting quarterback isn't even in camp for half of it. So,
or you don't even know who your starting quarterback is.
I'm talking about one that they do.
I know what you're talking about. But so that's why I feel, and that's my personal opinion, that this is something that should be done as far as training with your team before even when they have these summer practices.
I get that, but again, the contract between the league and the players doesn't allow for a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
They can do it on their own, but it can't be team organized.
Right, it can't be team organized, and the coaches can't be in a lot of these practices in the summer practices.
Right.
So,
right. Anyway, I think we're at a stalemate here. I think, look, you got some valid points about the preseason games and such, but you cannot go without any kind of preparation for the regular season. It would just
okay, and I agree with that, but the preparation has to lead to something, and in this case, in the NFLPA and the NFL, they all agreed that since there's no correlation, there's less of an effect. It's okay to cut out the preseason games, and they did.
Let's move on to our next topic. We'll agree to disagree here.
All right.
Which we normally do. That's fine. And now to the second topic, which was I was going to ignore this today, to be honest.
Can I open up with something?
I just want to preface this real quickly.
Okay.
I'll let you start. Yes.
All right.
I was going to ignore this topic today only because Carlos last Sunday was all over me telling me to let it go. Let it go. But he wanted to talk about Deshaun Watson today, so we're going to do that. And should he be grateful? Is suspension enough? You can start off. Go ahead.
All right, and what I want to mention is more of an athlete perspective.
Sure.
And what in these situations that have been happening and for these young players, and I feel for both leagues, and they need to do a little bit better of a job for this. And one league is doing better than the other. As far as communications and public relations.
What leagues are you talking about, by the way?
So I'm going to talk about Tatis and the steroid situation, as well as Deshaun Watson.
Okay.
And now they're both two different level infractions, but I'm not trying to put them on the same page. Yeah, I'm just saying the situation.
Totally they're egregious in their own way.
In their own way, yes, correct. So we'll start with Watson, and then we'll move on to baseball with Tatis. Deshaun Watson, the situation with him, as much as it's been in the media and everything, the NFL should not allow this man to say anything unless he's fully prepped to speak. Just like they didn't give him an opportunity to talk as much, or didn't give him the time that he allowed it to speak when he was moved to another team, and they introduced him, which was pretty much a publicity situation, which was correct, by the way. He shouldn't have had any time to speak about the situation that had nothing to do with football. Now, in as much time that has passed, why has he not had somebody to help him, coach him, or lead him into saying the things that he needs to say and not to say? Because at the end of the day, this is a situation that needs to go away, and he needs to make sure that he's not going to look good in any light, but he needs to make sure that things that come out of his mouth are things that are said properly, and he needs to make calculated decisions and moves to start the road to him getting away from this situation, which I understand. This is a situation will probably never. He's marked for life. It probably will never leave him. But as far as a professional athlete to play the sport that he's playing, he will have to move away from this in one way or another. And I don't know if he personally is not prepared because of the things that he's mentioned in the media, or he's not even. But the fact that the Cleveland Browns, I don't know what their public relations team's doing, and the NFL, I don't know what their public relations. But he needs to be put in a better situation.
Well, the NFL is not, it isn't the NFL's job to put him in a better situation.
I'm talking about to speak and to give him a better arena to actually talk and say things, whether it's apologize or make a statement. That's it.
I kind of agree with you a little bit, but I think you're at the wrong point where it should be happening. There should be better mentoring for these guys when they come into the league. They have mentoring and, I don't know what you want to call the shops that they have before, shops before.
Right.
But they bring in guys like, and this is the NFL. It's not just the teams; it's the NFL. But they bring in guys like Chris Gardner to talk about it. And what they tell them is, make sure you got somebody in your posse to take the fall when you get in trouble.
The rookie symposium.
mentoring these people, right?
Right.
I mean, I agree with you. The NFL, as a rule, needs a better mentoring process for young players.
Okay,
Not
so
after they get in trouble, before.
I'm talking more of
I know you are.
the media and the controlling of the fire of the burning fire, because the fire is burning, man.
But again,
You're not gonna put it out, but you
you-
got to control it as much as possible. And public relations and is important, and communication is important. And if you're a player who's in the wrong side of the of any kind of situation, if you open your mouth and the wrong things come out of your mouth, it's not helping you in any way, form, or fashion.
agree, but yes.
And I'm not saying that they don't need help they don't need mentoring before they get into the bad situation. What I'm saying is that they're already in a bad situation. The NFL knows that he's in a bad situation. Cleveland Browns know he's in a bad situation. You're not going to protect him anymore, but you can guide this kid to make sure that when he says anything, that any statements are made, that the media and that he is putting forward an effort that shows that he's trying to move past the situation in a positive light as much as possible.
And don't go out there and dismiss the fact that I'm sorry for any way I've impacted these people's lives. You did something wrong. How about that? Because you paid them off. You admitted you did something wrong. You might as well say the words.
Okay, so in his situation, in his exact words, I can't quote because I don't have him here with me. But to say that he's sorry to everybody, in a sense, or he's sorry whether you're because he got triggered or not. But these kind of words, these kind of words towards communicating towards not just not just for the people in the situation, but everybody, the fans, and even for the NFL to have him had said something like it's not helping.
They become not apologies is what they become. I'm sorry if I made you feel a certain way. I'm sorry if you were impacted by something I did. You didn't say, I'm sorry for my actions. Just say that.
Well, don't say anything.
Or don't say anything. All right, fine. I'm okay with that too, I guess.
My statement would be, I know what the situation is. I'm coming out with the statement later, or I hadn't made a statement already, and we're going to move on to the game, whatever. You know what I'm saying? On to Cincinnati. Let's go. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like,
don't be taking Bill Belichick's quote.
Don't make a situation out of the situation that's already passed or you're trying to get through.
And Cleveland's not helping him any either when the owner says, we really stood by him because he's our $230 million quarterback.
Yeah, that's another. That's what I don't understand. These teams, the NFL, they have a public relations, they have a marketing team, they have a communications team. What is they're not doing right by themselves and not. It's better to say nothing than to say what some of these guys have said. Like I don't get it. And I'm only mentioning this to you guys because that's what my shtick is. I'm in communications and public relations, and sometimes it's better to say nothing than to say anything. So
I think you should take your own advice there sometimes. But
yeah, well, if you're giving me a platform, I'm gonna use a platform, right?
Right. I should probably do the same thing, actually. But again, Cleveland, you always talk about Houston being complicit. I mean, Cleveland's complicit here in the fact that the way they structured his contract, they knew he was guilty. They knew he was going to suffer a penalty. He's making $46 million every single year, except this one, where it's about $1 million. I think the base is like $430,000, and I think it's 1.3 or something with the incentives he would have made. No. So he doesn't lose. He gets a $5 million fine, but he loses a lot less money than he would have lost. If they structured this contract differently. So again, they started to cover for him at the time they signed him.
And that's one. The next situation that I want to mention, and staying new with Deshaun Watson, is that he's not suspended for 8 games, for 10 games, for 12 games. He's suspended for 11 games, and the NFL has him, and the Cleveland Browns have him playing the Texans on the return game.
Maybe that's a penalty.
Listen,
you should have spent the whole year, number one. So I'm not.
You and I are gonna come into different ideas about what has happened with Deshaun Watson, And any penalty that he receives is the penalty deserved. And that's how I feel about it at the end of the day. The fact that the NFL and the NFLPA went back on the first mediation ruling is ridiculous. This coming from a woman judge.
The media left it open for this revisiting of this, by the way.
I know, but that's just saying that her decision really didn't matter. And that's another situation that looks bad on both the NFLPA and the NFL because this is a woman mediator. So
okay.
So
the NFL made it clear that they wanted an indefinite suspension and they wanted at least a year. I think they didn't fight harder for it. I think they went for this deal with Deshaun Watson because they want to get this behind them. Because this can't carry on into the season. They needed to put this to bed, and I think that's what happened.
But they're not taking the proper steps to do that. And the fact that he's coming back to play on the 11th game after his suspension is him playing against the Texans, the first team that threw him under the bus and let all this information out about him anyways.
So they threw him under the bus. So just because they knew about it, they should have covered it up. I think they
did cover it up. They covered it up, and they let the information out when they knew they were going to lose him as a player.
Well, he refused to come to camp. Let's remember who started this whole problem. He did. He refused to come to camp.
I'm not on Deshaun Watson's team, and I'm not speaking for him. I'm just saying that
sounds like you are.
But the situation doesn't. This whole situation is not good for.
Listen, if this happened to Odell Beckham, he'd have been suspended for at least a year and maybe more.
I don't know because Odell Beckham.
I'm just throwing a name out there. Anybody but a star quarterback in this league would have been suspended for a lot longer.
I can't say that, and I don't know. That's just that's an opinion. And
I'm not saying I don't have anything. I don't have any facts to back it up, but that's my thought. And you look at the comments from the owner of the Cleveland Browns. He made it clear if this was somebody lesser on my team, I wouldn't be even putting up this fight. He said that.
He's got to protect his assets, man.
Well, exactly. So if you're not as big an asset as Deshaun Watson, and again, they've given other guys a second chance. They gave Kareem Hunt a second chance. I get it. Again, a little bit different situation, but still.
Every situation is for a different reaction and a different, consequence. But I mean, look, the NFL has to stay away from the narrative and keep putting it out there. Like, they're not helping themselves, is what I'm saying.
God forbid any more allegations come out during this 11-game suspension because it's going to get really ugly for Deshaun Watson. If it doesn't, I'm going to stand by my comment. He will never play in a regular season NFL game.
First of all, he's already not taking the proper steps to being to better in his situation with some of the releases that he has on his Twitter and Instagram. Second, like he needs to reevaluate what his situation is and what he wants to do as a football player.
And I do hope they get him out of Cleveland this weekend because I found it this morning from the Philly Sports Guy that the massage therapist convention is in Cleveland this weekend. You can't make this stuff up. That he better leave town like right now. So I'm just saying. Anyway, you wanted to talk about Tatis before we run out of time. So Tatis has put out a statement that he used a medication for ringworm that included some. He got a bad haircut. Haircut. That's why I use steroids.
Right. So but not again. He's going to go back to his team and make a statement to the owner and to the team about this situation. I mean, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I do know that the San Diego Padres have an opportunity of moving on from Tatis because of this situation.
I'm sure they got something in his contract, right?
Yeah, on his contractual, especially contractual. So, is this we might see one more season of him in San Diego, but he has to make sure that the next steps he takes, he does better for himself, especially as a young person and having so much talent. And it's hard to move from this situation. Like Robinson Cano did it twice, but some of these guys who got pinned for it, and then return. Even A-Rod
come back. He can come back from this. What these guys got to learn is they got to just admit they made a mistake and move on.
It's not about coming back and being a professional athlete. It's coming back and and people will always know there's that scar there, knowing that he was the one who was who cheated.
It's found Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and Sammy Sosa and all these guys around for the rest of their lives.
And then maybe, I don't know if you remember that player that had incident with drugs and methamphetamines.
Which guy?
And he was an all-star. He came back, even a better player, but then he fall back into.
Are we talking about Josh Hamilton?
Hamilton, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but again, a lot of these guys have support from their teams. The teams have support from the Major League Baseball, from their official leagues, to get to put the message and communicate these things correctly, and they very seldom don't, and that's a problem as well. So,
well, this situation and the way it's being handled post the reveal of the allegation, or not the allegation, but the suspension, it goes back to your comments too about who's advising these guys about what to say after the fact, right? It's the same thing with Tatis. Don't rely on your dad. Your dad's going to back you up, and he's going to say he went to got a bad haircut, got ringworm, and he took something he shouldn't have taken. Maybe he did, but you got to know that all these players know the stuff that's banned substances. You got to say to somebody, "Can I take this or not?"
Well,
you know the situation.
I'm not for the players in this situation where I'm saying that he didn't know. What I will say is that there's the list of banned substances for professional sports in baseball, of what I know, and in football, is extremely is large. It's large.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of, and the problem is a lot of these things are in over-the-counter drugs, and supplements.
Do you think for a second that his story rings true? Did you not text me the other day that you'd been telling me that he's looking bigger?
Yeah, I did. And I'm not saying that I'm in his in Tatis's favor. What I'm saying is that if you break it down, these players should have known. Yeah, they should know what goes in their body. They should. They should take very good care of their body and their conditioning. And in his case, he's young, he messed up, but the messaging that has come out and the way it's come out and the way the MLB let it out for the 80-game suspension, this is something that happened in March or in May.
I believe so, yes. But again, they had to do their investigation.
Yeah. And then with all the investigation and everything going, he was trying to he was trying to fight the situation at first, but then he just let it go. So he already looks guilty, in the eyes of the fans, the league.
You just come clean and say, I made a mistake.
That's hard for a lot of professional people, athletes, stars, and even normal people to just be honest and tell the truth, man. But
I make mistakes every day, and I say, I'll do better next time.
Maybe you need a PR relations. I'll do better next time. That's not how you're supposed to handle that situation.
I've needed a PR guy for 60 years. It's too late for me now, but it's not too late for some of these young guys. They need to get some good advice. Listen, let's wrap it up. Good show today. I mean, we obviously disagree a little bit on Watson, not as far maybe as we used to. And we're never going to agree on this training camp thing, but that's fine. That's why we have this show and we get to have this debates. And we go on. The country can learn from Are You Serious? Because Carlos and I can go at each other tooth and nail, but at the end of the day, we're still buddies. And I say, have a great day, Carlos. And I will say it again. Good show. Have a great day.
Thank you, Keith. Have a good one. You guys enjoy your weekend.
We'll see you next week for Are You Serious? And we'll see you Sunday morning with the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. Keith Engel for Are You Serious on TGI Sports Talk.
Have a good one, guys.
Northeast Stream Sports.